Well, we begin in the NFC. Let's go to the NFC East. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. It's the Dallas Cowboys. It's the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. The Eagles, obviously, they won the NFC East in 2022 with a 14-3 record. The Cowboys came in second place. They were a playoff team with the 12-5 record. The Giants were 9-7-1. They also made the playoffs. Commanders finished the season 8-8-1. And the NFC East got 3 teams into the playoffs last year. And the odds to win the division, the Eagles are favored. They are a plus 115. Cowboys come in second place, plus 195. Giants plus 900. And the Commanders are a plus 1,800 to win the NFC East. The NFC East this year, they play the AFC East and the NFC West. So let's start off with the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East. Obviously, last year, the Philadelphia Eagles, they were 14-3 during the regular season. They were the number 1 seed in the NFC. The road to the Super Bowl had to go through Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles beat the Giants on the divisional round playoff weekend. They followed that up. They beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. They lost in the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs 38-35. But it was a very, very entertaining football game. And Jalen Hurts played well in that game. The Eagles offensively played very, very well. And heading into this season, they are coached by Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts is their quarterback. Now, last year, Jalen Hurts had the best season of his career. 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,701 passing yards. He had the best season of his career last year, and he was a legitimate NFL MVP candidate last season. They did lose their coordinator, Shane Steichen, to the Indianapolis Colts. I thought Steichen did a tremendous job putting Hurts in positions to be successful last year. And as an offensive coordinator, he was a great coordinator for this Philadelphia Eagles football team. They lost him because he's coaching the Colts now. But you got Jalen Hurts back at the helm. You replaced Miles Sanders with DeAndre Swift in the backfield. At receiver, you still got Devontae Smith. You still got A.J. Brown. At tight end, they still got Dallas Goedert. And I love their offensive line. I think the Philadelphia Eagles have arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. You got Kelsey at center, right guard Cam Jurgens, right tackle Lane Johnson, left tackle Jordan Mailata. I think the Eagles' offensive line is the best offensive line in the NFL. You can make that argument. And again, their skill position players are some of the best in the NFL. Offensively, the Eagles have no weaknesses, none whatsoever. Defensively, they got a top 5 defense in the NFL. And they had the nerve to add Jalen Carter in this year's NFL draft. So he's the left defensive tackle for the Eagles. The right defensive tackle is Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox is one of the best D tackles we have in the NFL. You got Brandon Graham up front with Cox, with Carter. At your linebackers position, you got Zach Cunningham. Okay, at the other linebacker spot, you got Riddick as well in that secondary. They still got big play Darius Slay. They got Reed Blankenship. So this Philadelphia Eagles football team, top to bottom, is one of the more complete football teams in the NFL. I put this roster up against any roster in the NFL, and I feel like the Eagles would have the advantage at most of the positions on the field. Majority of the positions, they would have the advantage. So for me, I'm looking at the Philadelphia Eagles and their schedule for this season. Because they played the AFC East and the NFC West, I think it's going to be much tougher for the Eagles in 2023 than it was in 2022. You look at their schedule this year, they are in New York week 6 against the Jets, and then they are home against the Dolphins in week 7, and they have a game against the Chiefs in week 11. So this is going to be a season for the Eagles where I don't think they're going to be 14-3, but I do believe they're going to be 11-6, maybe even 12-5. But I don't see them being 14-3, so I don't see them having the same success in 2023 that they had in 2022. I don't see it. And also, they did lose both of their coordinators. They lost Shane Steichen to the Colts. They lost Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator, to the Arizona Cardinals. He's a new Arizona Cardinals head coach. So I don't know if they're going to have that same chemistry, considering their two coordinators are now in Indianapolis and in Arizona. Also, I thought last year the Eagles were able to avoid major injuries. This team was healthy majority of the season last year. And this is the reason why they were the number 1 seed in the NFC. But also, too, the Eagles, their road to the Super Bowl, honestly, was easy last year. You had Daniel Jones and the New York Giants in the divisional round of the playoffs. Give me a break. I'm going to talk about the Giants here in a bit, but I don't believe in Daniel Jones. And then in the NFC Championship game, the 49ers ran out of quarterbacks. They ran out of quarterbacks. At one point in the NFC Championship game, Christian McCaffrey had to take snaps. That's how bad it was for the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. I was excited for the NFC Championship game last year because I felt like we had the 2 best teams in the NFC going up against each other, in the 49ers and in the Eagles. And Brock Purdy injured his elbow, and then the 49ers lost Josh Johnson, their backup quarterback, and it was a mess. In the NFC Championship game, it was a complete waste. It was a complete waste, and it was sad because I felt like these were the 2 best teams, and I was excited to see them face off against each other. Unfortunately, the 49ers had injuries at quarterback. But in the Super Bowl, the Eagles did not sack Patrick Mahomes one time. And this is the best defense, supposedly, in the NFL. And I said it earlier that I think that they have a great roster, top to bottom, and I think their defense is a top 5 defense. But they didn't show up in the Super Bowl last year. For Patrick Mahomes to hang 31 points on the Eagles on a bum ankle, that's concerning for Eagles fans as we head into the 2023 season. They did not sack Patrick Mahomes one time. I thought that was something that was a major red flag for the Eagles. I thought they were going to be able to apply some pressure on Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and it did not happen. It didn't happen. But I do expect the Eagles to finish 11-6, maybe even 12-5. Now, let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, the Cowboys finished 12-5, and you look at the Dallas Cowboys. They let go of Kellen Moore, and so now Mike McCarthy has full play calling responsibilities, and Dak Prescott is their quarterback. Now, last year, Dak Prescott had 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and he had as many interceptions last year as Davis Mills of the Houston Texans. They both led the NFL in interceptions thrown. So Dak Prescott struggled to protect the football last year for this Dallas Cowboys offense. And remember last year, Dak missed games. The man missed games, and he struggled to protect the football. 15 interceptions is way too many if you are a franchise quarterback in the National Football League, especially on a team that's loaded like the Dallas Cowboys are. You look at the Dallas Cowboys and what they have on their football team, on their roster. At running back, you got Tony Pollard. You got Deuce Vaughn in the backfield. At receiver, you have a number 1 receiver in CeeDee Lamb. Okay? They traded for Brandon Cooks earlier in the offseason. You still got Michael Gallup at receiver. You're going to have Jake Ferguson at tight end. Their offensive line is a top 10 offensive line in the NFL. You got Tyler Smith at left guard. You got Tyron Smith at left tackle. They signed Zach Martin to a new contract extension a few weeks ago. So he got his money. So offensively, the Dallas Cowboys have a top 10 offense in the NFL. Now defensively, they got one of the best defensive players in the NFL in Micah Parsons. You got DeMarcus Lawrence up front. Leighton Vander Esch at linebacker. In their secondary, I love their secondary. They traded for Stephon Gilmore earlier in the offseason, and you still got Trayvon Diggs as well. I look at the Dallas Cowboys roster top to bottom. They have one of the best rosters in the NFL. But the biggest question for the Cowboys is going to be, will Dak Prescott step up in the postseason and deliver for the Cowboys and at least get the Cowboys back to an NFC Championship game? And that's something that they haven't done in 20 or more years. This Cowboys team has not reached a conference championship in 20 years or more. I don't know the exact number of years it's been, but they haven't been to a conference championship game in the 2000s at all. So I look at the Cowboys. They let go of Jason Garrett a few years ago. They moved off of Kellen Moore. So now it's going to be on Dak Prescott. It's all about Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys. There are no more people or individuals on this coaching staff who you can blame. He got a number one receiver in CeeDee Lamb. He got a reliable running back in Tony Pollard. He got one of the best defenses in the NFL. Micah Parsons is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. There's no more excuses for Dak Prescott at all. So that's my take on the Cowboys. Now let's look at the New York Giants. The New York Giants, they are led by head coach Brian Daboll. I thought last year they overachieved. They finished 9-7-1. They made the playoffs as a wild card team. But I got questions about their quarterback. Daniel Jones is the New York Giants quarterback. Last year he had 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 3,205 passing yards, completing 67% of his passes. Mac Jones, to me, is not the answer for the New York Giants moving forward. I know he had a decent season last year, and everyone's saying, oh, Daniel Jones played well last year. The man didn't even have 20 touchdown passes. He didn't even have 20 touchdown passes, and you got Giants fans running around here talking about they have a franchise quarterback in Daniel Jones. It's just funny to me. Like, the standard and the bar is so low in New York when it comes to the Giants and their quarterback play. Daniel Jones, 15 touchdowns last year. I wasn't impressed. I was not impressed. But the best player on the New York Giants is Saquon Barkley. And this Giants football team is better when Saquon is on the field than when he's not on the field. And the numbers back it up. The last 5 seasons, the Giants offense, with Saquon, they average 5.4 yards per play. Without Saquon, they average 5.0. With Saquon, they average 4.7 yards per rush. Without Saquon, they average 4.2 yards per rush. And Saquon, he has 28% of the team's scrimmage yards. That's only behind Nick Chubb, Christian McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, and Derrick Henry. So he has 28% of their scrimmage yards on their offense. I'm not impressed with the Giants' skill position players. You got Paris Campbell. You got Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodges. I don't think they have great skill position players, but the one thing I give Brian Daboll and the Giants credit for, they know who they are. The Giants, they know exactly who they are. They're not the Chiefs or the Bengals or the Chargers. They're not trying to fling the football all around the yard. They are trying to run the football with Saquon Barkley and have him produce in their offense. And they don't have Daniel Jones drop back the pass 35 or 40 times per game. They want to hand the football off to Saquon and let Saquon Barkley be effective in their offense. And I love it. I love Brian Daboll's approach to his football team and knowing the type of football team that he has at his disposal. Now, defensively, the biggest question is going to be what they're going to get out of Kayvon Thibodeau. Remember, he was a top draft pick a few years ago. I had high expectations for Thibodeau. I want to see if he can stay healthy throughout the season. But that's the Giants. That's the Giants and my take on them. Let's go to the Washington Commanders. They're going to be starting Sam Howell as their quarterback. They did bring in Eric Bieniemy as their offensive coordinator. Ron Rivera is on the hot seat, unfortunately. And I love Riverboat Ron, but he's on the hot seat. We have to see if Ron Rivera can possibly sneak this Commanders football team into the playoffs this year. But I don't have expectations or high expectations for the Commanders this year. I really don't. I like some of their skill position players. Curtis Samuel. They still got Terry McLaurin as well. But I'm not really a big believer in their overall structure of their football team. I got to see more from Sam Howell. I haven't seen enough to give an opinion on whether or not Sam Howell can be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. But I do like them bringing in Eric Bieniemy. And then you remember earlier in the offseason, players on the Commanders had the nerve to be complaining about Eric Bieniemy and how he is too hard on them in practice, and they were whining about how his approach. I'm like, shut the hell up. This Washington Commanders football team finished 8-1 last year. They were not a playoff team, and you're complaining about Eric Bieniemy's coaching style? What the hell are we talking about here? This ain't pee-wee football. This ain't high school football. This is the NFL, the best of the best. Eric Bieniemy, he knows a little something about winning considering how much he won in Kansas City. You want Eric Bieniemy to be coaching these players hard and having high expectations for his players on his Commanders offense. That's what you need in Washington. They need Eric Bieniemy to coach them hard. So I don't have high expectations for the Commanders. I do think Ron Rivera is on the hot seat, and I like Ron Rivera a lot, but he hasn't gotten the job done since he's been in Washington, and they have new ownership now in Washington as well. So I'm not so sure that Ron Rivera is their guy moving forward. But in the NFC East, I'm going to go 4-1. I have the Washington Commanders finishing 4th, the New York Giants finishing 3rd, Cowboys finishing 2nd, and the Eagles finishing 1st. Same exact way it went last year in the final standings in the 2022 season. Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders in the NFC East. And those are my predictions for the 2023 season for the NFC East.